Today's headline is on the bridge of a battleship. It says, "The modern battleship is a marvel of concentration and space economy. There's no room for things purely ornamental, but every foot of space is used to some purpose in connection with the storage or operation of the myriad adjuncts necessary for the work, the safety, and the comfort of the hundreds of men who crowd one of these floating fortresses." If one were to choose, however, the one section of a battleship which above all others is a veritable nest of wonders and surprises, choice would unhesitatingly fall upon the bridge, that elevated structure which is so appropriately named and which extends the full width of the deck on the forward part of the ship, in front of the huge smokestacks as a landlubber might designate its location. For one thing, we find on the bridge an even greater array than anywhere else on the ship of those remarkable mechanical and electrical devices which do so much of the work on shipboard that would seem to require human intelligence. But the bridge has an addition, a special significance, which multiplies many times its importance and the interest of its equipment. It is the nerve center of the ship, the seat of authority and command, which directs all the operations within the bounds of the big armor-clad and also the intelligence office for which this warship community communicates over vessels of the fleet, and indeed with the entire outside world. Under ordinary conditions, when the battleship is cruising at sea, participating in battle drill or target practice, or engaged in any of the other important functions of a sea warrior, the captain commanding, the navigating officer, and other responsible officials of the ship had their positions on the bridge. In time of actual battle, those directing heads of the fighting machine would not expose themselves on the bridge, but they would not be far away. Sheltered by conning towers or some other protective screens, they would be as near as possible to the vantage points to be found only on the exposed bridge, and from those substitute observatories, some of them located directly behind or otherwise adjacent to the bridge, would direct the action of the battling armor-clad. In order to enable the officers on the bridge to be at all times closely in touch with all parts of the ship, this elevated promenade is made the nerve center of elaborate telephone, telegraph, and signaling systems that afford instantaneous communication with the engine and fire rooms, the ammunition magazines, all the different gun stations throughout the ship, and in fact, every scene of activity that has part in the complex mission of one of these great fighting machines. The telephone system on a battleship is much like the private telephone system in a great store or manufactory, but with the difference that on shipboard, most of the receivers are of the pattern which fit close to the head, covering both ears, and strongly resembling those used by the hello girls in telephone exchanges. This special equipment is designed to shut out disturbing noises and is very essential when officers and men may be called upon to listen to telephone conversation when the guns are roaring or against the opposition of the various distracting noises always to be encountered on shipboard. Near the bridge of a battleship is the wireless telegraph station, which is one of the newer, yet easily one of the most important adjuncts of the up-to-date battleship. However, the wireless telegraph is not used for interior communication aboard the battleship, but solely for the exchange of messages with other ships and with shore stations. What are sometimes referred to as telegraphs on shipboard are not telegraphs at all, as the lay reader understands them, but are rather signaling systems. The most common of these communicative systems is that whereby the pressure of a button or lever at one station on a battleship, say on the bridge, will cause a printed command to suddenly appear in illuminated form in a distant part of the ship. For instance, the movement of a certain lever on the bridge of the battleship will cause an illuminated sign to suddenly appear before the eyes of the engineers, way down below the waterline reading full speed ahead, or full speed astern, or any other command which it's desired to give. By means of this method of signaling, a command can, if need be communicated simultaneously to a number of different stations scattered throughout the ship. Indeed, it is by this expedient that the captain of the battleship ensures uniformity of action during target practice or in battle. In a twinkling, he can send the command "begin firing" or "cease firing," or any other instructions to each and every gun crew scattered throughout the length of the ship. On the bridge, likewise, we find all the paraphernalia for steering the ship, including the great wheel, the electrical control, the compasses, the chartboard, with its stores of charts and all other mechanical adjuncts for keeping the huge vessel on the proper course. Here, too, are the seemingly simple devices which now control the manipulation of the huge searchlights perched up aloft on skeleton steel towers, a means of managing the searchlights which is not only more rapid but more effective than the old plan of turning them this way and that by manual labor. On the bridge, too, are no end of signaling devices for supplementing the wireless telegraph and communication with other ships or with the shore. There's signal flags for use with various codes and with the always useful wigwag. There are the semaphore and ardoise systems for signaling at night by means of different combinations of red and white lights, and there is the electric torch for unofficial messages. The American Navy has been the most successful military organization from its very inception which the world has ever seen. That is a pretty broad statement, but it's absolutely true. There are good reasons for this. In the early days, we were a commercial people. We were natural sailormen. Our people lived along the shores. They made their money in commercial pursuits. The men who commanded merchant ships were not only good sailors, they were good merchants, and the foundations for many of the great fortunes of this country have come from that source. In order to protect themselves, they were obliged to go armed. Their ships were armed as privateers in the time of war. The result is that they not only knew navigation, but they also knew gunnery, and combined with these qualities, the intelligence which makes great merchants. Naturally, when those men came into positions where they commanded men of war, they were equal to the occasion, although they had no naval training. As time went on, they acquired a naval training, so that in later wars, and the early part of the 19th century, they met every requirement. And in the recent wars, the graduates of the Naval Academy have been equal to every duty which has been imposed upon them. They have made a record of which every American citizen should be proud. The American sailorman has always been efficient. They were good men in the time of the Revolution, competent men in the time of the War of 1812. They are better men today than they were in those days, because today, 95% of them are American citizens, and not a man is shipped in the American Navy who has not declared his intention to become a citizen. 25 years ago, not more than 30% of our men of war's men were American citizens. The American Navy has been successful because our ships have always been as good ships as any that were built in the world. Our merchantmen, in the Revolutionary times, and down to the Civil War, were the best merchant ships sailing the seas. They were, no doubt, the best manned, and they made the fastest time. During the period of wooden ships, when we built men of war, they were of the same general character. Our men of war, gun for gun, were equal to, and probably superior to those of any other nation. We have always been able to shoot better than most people. Go back to the early times, to the Revolutionary War. We lost 24 men of war, carrying less than 500 guns in the Revolutionary War, while the British lost 102 men of war, carrying more than 3,500 guns. We captured 300 of their merchant ships, and it is not too much to say that if it had not been for the damage caused by the American Navy, we would not have won the Revolutionary War at all. That is, it might have been necessary later to have fought that war over again. The same relative skill prevailed in the War of 1812. Our ships of the same class were superior to the ships of our opponents. This statement is confirmed when we study the exact figures. For instance, in the Hornet Peacock contest, the British ship lost 5 men killed and 37 wounded, out of a crew of 130, while the American ship had but 3 wounded, this in 11 minutes. In the Wasp Frolic fight, the British ship lost 15 men killed and 47 wounded, out of a crew of 110, while the American ship lost but 5 killed and 5 wounded from a crew of the same size. I could mention a number of similar instances which demonstrate my statement that at the time, we were able to shoot well, and we've been shooting better ever since. Not only the men of the North, but the men of the South shot well during the Civil War. They shot well during the Spanish War, and we can shoot half a dozen times as well today as we could during the Spanish War. Never has the American Navy made such a record as it's making today, and never has there been a Navy having a record excelling the one which our Navy is now making for capacity to hit the target. That is really the whole war problem, to hit what you are shooting at. We have not in the past built homogeneous fleets. We build a surplus of battleships and then provide the men to man them, and frequently provide more than we have ships for. We build auxiliaries and torpedo boats, if we do at all, without any regard to the relation which such craft should bear on the battleship fleet. And while we have built or have in construction 29 battleships, we have practically no means of furnishing tenders for them under service conditions. When the battleship fleet was sent to the Pacific recently, it was necessary to charter 40 foreign ships to carry coal for it. If it had been found necessary to send the fleet around the Horn in time of war, it could not have been attempted, because we could not have furnished American vessels in which to carry the coal. Very few people realize the deplorable condition we're in, as far as our merchant marine is concerned. If we had a large merchant marine, we could draw from it without having special auxiliaries for the Navy. But we are so lacking in both that it makes our present situation almost hopeless. When the Spanish War broke out, it was necessary to purchase colliers and transports. 102 vessels were bought at a cost of something over $17 million, but they cost a very large percentage more than their market value and more than twice as much as they could have been sold for if they had been put on the market at the termination of the war. In other words, we paid out millions of dollars because we had not provided ourselves with suitable auxiliaries for our battleship fleet. We should have a Navy adequate for our needs, not only adequate in battleships, but adequate in every other respect. This story comes from the great state of New Mexico, being reported in the Alamogordo News of December 1st, 1910. Thank you for joining us today. Beginning next week, on Monday, February 5th, we're going to be going to a new uploading schedule. We'll be uploading on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.